it's nice and sunny out there in Gurgaon after a lot of rain. So they always say there's always sunshine after a lot of rain, and there is always a lot of impactful work after a lot of work in the corporate field, so to say. So the guest today is Naghma, and she is the president and chief executive officer of Edelgift Foundation. Also, I know I introduced her like this because she's worked, of course, in insurance. She comes from a commerce background, and now into a kind of work somewhere which really deeply resonates with the kind of work I do in SecondAct. So I just thought that it's the right day to introduce her. It's nice and bright because we have a bigger meaning here. So Naghma, welcome. It is such an honor to have somebody like me sitting on the other side, probably who has a second act already, so welcome. And how are you feeling?
No, feeling really nice. Thank you so much for having me here. And like I said before the recording started, I really appreciate what you're doing, putting these stories out, letting a lot of people know it's possible. I think that's commendable. So very excited and honored to be invited here.
Thank you so much. I know that you're a part of Goonj in the advisory committee. You're doing a lot of philanthropic work through the Edelgift Foundation. When I see the website, I say, oh my God, I actually went through the website 5 times and I said, what should be my direction of question? Because there's so much there that you guys do. So why don't you start with that? Because, it'll be so much nicer to hear, why did you drop, commerce that you studied to insurance and now, full-time into this? How did that journey happen? Is it by default? Is it something you do intentionally? And something that, happened to you? So to tell us about it.
No, I think it was the most beautiful accident of my life. It was not unlike a lot of really good people. I don't have a great story of realization or dawn upon me that there is better stuff to do than work on numbers. It started with me wanting to become a CA as fast as possible so that I get education done and dusted. And I was one of those CAs in those times when by 22, I was a chartered accountant and a graduate. And by 23, I was an MCOM as well. So then started working, and I'd been such a, diligent student, and very easily and very quickly, I realized that I had messed up, that my work was not giving me the joy that my education was. Like I loved studying law and accounts and all of that, but I hated working on it. And I actually joined a very good insurance company. They had just started at that time. The sector was booming. So everything was working for me. Wow. And I was doing some very interesting work, but the day just ended and it would be like, what have I done? Nothing really. So by then I also had gotten married. So I'd like really crunched up everything in my life and decided, all right, let's take a break, figure out life, understand why I'm born. And in the meantime, also have 2 babies. And so I had 2 sons. Through that journey, the question just kept coming back in my head on, why and what am I supposed to be doing? And the thought of going back to work was very exciting, but thought of going back to work that I left was not. So honestly, it was just me looking around and observing every possible area of work to figure where do I fit in, because that was most important to me. Thankfully, I came from a situation where I was not the key breadwinner. That that's a huge privilege to be able to sit back and I chose to exercise it. I mean, if had it been any other way, I wouldn't have had a choice like millions of other people who need to do what they need to do. Right. But I exercised it, and by some stroke of luck, actually by some maneuvering as well, I found Edelweiss. Edelweiss had a young foundation. It was just 3 years old. Vidya Shah was its founder. And I think I fell in love with the vision that Vidya had. I didn't know what the development sector was, but I said, I'd like to be here and figure. They were kind enough to say, all right, let's figure this together. This was also pre-CSR, and it was not really very fancy to be in the development sector. And I think it took me 6 months to figure I have arrived at destination point. And here is where the new journey begins.
Wow, so fascinating. So when you say that, that time social sector was not, at least today, I know that when you work in a social sector, you're very proud of it. People really admire you, just like you had such kind words for me. So when that wasn't the case, it didn't really merge with what you had studied. So then what fascinated you, and why did you really think that you belong here?
So yeah, it was a very humbling experience. I had always been very proud of the fact that I come from a middle class family, hardworking parents, Bombay girl, studied within limited means, and we all, the middle class children, had this place of pride, right? We have traversed adversity and we have achieved everything on our hard work. And then it took me 6 months of moving around, doing field visits, reading up on stuff, and I realized what a fallacy that is and how that story is completely mythical. The fact is that we are extremely privileged. We may have limited budgets in homes, but if you have parents who are non-abusive, who advise you at the right time, if you have the benefit of good schooling, even if it is a municipal school, if you have friends who propel you forward instead of pull you back, and if you have access to information to make key decisions in life, then honestly, it doesn't matter what the family budget is. You have the maker, you've won the lottery,
Right.
And I had all of that. And suddenly my whole belief that I have, achieved everything in spite of my middle class upbringing just kept crumbling down. And the whole way I viewed my life changed. And then, you have the question, so now what?
Right.
And for me, the answer was, if I have received the privilege of information and access to make something out of my life, the least that I can do is pass the privilege forward. So apply my time and my effort to ensure that there are more and more people who get that access. And that is what development is really about. Development is not about, donating money for clothes, giving your leftovers, or sponsoring an education. What we are really doing is providing an inroad, an access point to get to a better place than from where somebody's starting. So that kind of fell in place, and I was so much at peace and saying, okay, this is where I am.
So when I see, all the work that, your organization does, on one side, there is a lot of facilitation to collaboration, to partnerships, to corporate work. So what is the essence? Can you tell me, like, if I talk about what is that one thing that you're trying to achieve through different verticals? Like I was telling you that I have, 4 verticals, but it all boils down to one thing. What's your second act? What's your higher purpose? So it all boils down to that. So what is it that Edelgive is doing?
So again, there is another myth that when we are providing for someone's tuition or providing for a meal, we are changing a life or we are impacting a life. Right. There are 2-3 things that we have to remember. One is the fact that someone is in a position of poverty or in a position of vulnerability. Right. It's not one thing. It's not just that there's no money in the house. There's a lot of issues that come together to create a situation when someone cannot break out of poverty.
So true.
Similarly, when we are providing help, us cutting a check is one of the final acts that lend into someone's enablement.
That's a great perspective. I never really thought about that. Yeah, thanks for bringing.
Yeah, if money could solve the world's problems, then we'd be a lot happier. If money was really able to solve, there is a lot of things that cannot change with money. And impoverished people in vulnerability, like I said, access to information is a bigger problem than access to money. What do you do with that money? So I feel that the way we look at development, the way we look at pulling someone out of poverty or doing better for someone has a lot to do with the situation. And if it is that, then there can be no one person who's smart enough or has enough money or resources to change it. So we need a networked approach to pull a person out of a networked problem.
Right.
And if you see the whole way Edelgive is functioning, it's how to bring the funder, the NGO, the service provider, the whole process, make the process so easy that your money flows easily and the benefit goes easily. Because right now giving is more complex because of the way we are ad hoc about it. So it'll give attempts to streamline giving, make it easier for the giver and easier for the recipient.
But is the work mostly centered around women and providing equal space for them when you talk about also income equality, opportunities? Is it more towards women? And then my next question is why?
So women is one. We have three core verticals apart from everything that we do. One is education. The other is resilience, livelihoods, more into rural areas. And the third is women. Women are very, very centric to all our work. Because if you see the cycle of any kind of vulnerability, like if you see, well, let's talk about even caste system, or whether we talk about poverty, there is someone above us who is in a position of power. Okay. We have lesser money than them, lesser power than them. They get to, what we call in Hindi, havi ho jate hain. There's somebody above us, all of us. There is a layer above us. But why? There is also a layer below us. So that's the beauty of how, systems are created. There's someone always with more money and power. There's someone with lesser money and power below us. But even for the most marginalized, he has a wife on which he can dominate. In the hierarchy of domination, women are always left the worse off. And there is again a whole structure because of which they're left out of benefits, of agency, of decision making. But you look at what is the work that's happening. Women bear the work in almost every domain. Like Choda's example, I'll give you. If you think of farmer, what do you think? You think of all the Bollywood in the world. You think of this poor man in the field toiling, hardly any weight. But you really go there and you realize most of the farm is full of women. Yeah. Full of women. There are so many women farmers, but it's not even in our visual. So when you're not even seeing them, how do you do anything for them? So our whole effort is first you see them. Then you understand why this woman chooses to be, why would anyone choose to be in a weak position? And then you solve for it. So Edelgive really tries to bring out that story. All of our work is really about first visibilize the issue. That's why women are in everything that we do.
And it's so beautiful, because I also do so much work on women. And I see that once they get this fire and this ability to firstly, believe in their own self, I mean, they just take over completely. They are so dynamic. I work with now younger girls, in communities who are so aspirational. All they need is that, okay, I'm raring to go. Just show me the direction. It's like that. So I just feel that so much women take over as well, because they just need to given a pat on the back to tell them that, okay, you are capable, and they're just all set. Isn't it? I mean, isn't
completely. It? So worth it. It's just so, there's a joy to watch that realization dawn.
So amazing. So I'm glad that we resonate here as well. In fact, I didn't start off that way. There are so many people who ask me why women. There's so much of women in your thing, and it's a learning for myself. Like you said, that there was a realization that dawned on you. It dawned on me that there is so much work to be done on ourselves, to be honest. And the first program I coined was called I Celebrate Myself. And actually that was for women to celebrate themselves, because we just don't. Right? I mean, we just don't. So I think that's so beautiful. But tell me something, that is money related to power? What is your, opinion on that? Is money
has a lot to do with power, because money gets you things, right? Money is a resource. Money does good and money does a lot of bad. And when there is unreasonable money that is in the hand of one person, then the others suffer. The systemic distancing of women from employment, how families encourage women to stay home and take care, because you are the higher being. That's again a beautiful myth that is created, that you are the nourisher, you are the nurturer, and you're doing this larger role in the family, so you stay home. But she's this unpaid work. There is complete abuse of her time, and also celebration of her womanhood. Yes, we must celebrate womanhood, but not to a degree where you actually take away agency,
right?
And put her on a pedestal. So money has a lot. The minute a woman starts earning her income, and that is why it's very important for women to keep themselves financially engaged. The reason is that money does hold enough power to have, you have a voice or not, sometimes depends on whether you're bringing home the money or not. And any which ways, it's good to be financially independent. So money has a lot to do with power, not the only thing.
Yeah.
I believe power is more important. Power has more influence than money, but money does influence power.
Because also a lot of decision making comes from there, right? So
Yeah.
even at our homes, I feel, though me and my husband were always earning, of course, no comparison to what he was earning, but still comparatively, but all the decisions were literally ticked off by him. Moving to a bigger house, going somewhere. It was always like, so I'm thinking if it's happening in our setups, imagine what's happening, which is still a lot of work to be done in the rural setups.
But that's also a lot to do with how we are trained. Even us from the more educated backgrounds, the way we are raised and with very subtle but very concrete messaging, that the man will make some decisions. After much later in life, I started thinking, why am I supposed to be weaker in maths? Like, I'm the CA. Why am I supposed to not know my finances? Why am I handing it over to this really nice man that I'm married to, and he's amazing? But the fact is, I'm not applying myself. And I'm educated and I'm handing it over. Nobody's taking it. So it's not always also about the man doing something. It's so ingrained in us. Like this whole thing, I have a problem with the way we talk about female drivers and this whole, I like women drivers and these 100,000 jokes. And come on, I've been driving for 25 years. And even if I had an accident, so what? But I didn't. But the whole idea, what has my gender got to do with my cognitive abilities? It's ridiculous. Who feeds this into our heads? Yeah. It's very systemic.
Very stereotypical and very, like we grow up with these thoughts, like you're saying. So true. So how is it with 3 boys at home?
Oh, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. It's very interesting. I get to see an alternative side to things. I'm a very vocal feminist, and having 2 boys actually gives me access into the world of how men think. I have 2 generations of men, right, and the way they comprehend, and we have very, very active discussions on the dinner table. Like when Gangubai was released, I had gone to watch it with my sons, and in some of the scenes, the interpretation of the scene was so different to this young male adult mind. It's very important to understand how we differ, and therefore how we can enable each other. It's a very important thing. So my house is a very, very active, vocal house. We try to encourage all kinds of conversations, everything, every possible kind of issue we encourage to discuss, because I think as mother of boys, it's we're sending two adults out into the world.
Yeah, boys out in the world. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a big responsibility, but it's also a lot of fun.
How are you interpreted also, like, with your peer groups, with people who, you studied with you? Are you looked at like, oh, she's a feminist, here she has a voice? Women, the way they look at women sometimes as well. Do you see anything that comes out of such relationships for you?
Yes. I find it actually easier to decode relationships with men than with women, because we are slotted very easily. See, I had a lot of years when I wasn't working. So I was a homemaker, as they call it, for some time. I'm also a professional. I'm also very vocal. I carry myself a certain way. So it's also very easy for us to internally say, "Acha, wo aisi hai. She can do it because she is that kind." I think our journeys are disabled by ourselves. There is nobody who's a certain kind. We all get to some place. So I have some amazing women friends who are my, support system, who I lean on, who've been part of every good and bad. I wish enough of us had that. I feel we don't come together as a tribe for that kind of enablement often enough, but that's important. Otherwise, we don't even need the men, we kind of judge each other actively enough. And that is like, we don't, if we only came together to build each other forward more often. I'm not saying it's absent, but I just wish it was more often happening more often and more actively.
So what can actually we do as people? Especially also the kind of work that we can bring forward, and you've seen the change that impacts lives. In our philanthropic work, in our NGO space, you said money is not the only thing that we can do. That's really the last point, right? When you cut a check. But then what is your recommendation as regular people? What can we do?
As regular people, I think it's very simple. We fall into this complication. As regular people, we have to start where we are standing. We don't even have to know that. For example, as an individual, male or female, office or home, who are the people who depend on me? Whether it's my staff or it's my peer, we start from the basics. Are we being fair to the people who depend on us? When the pandemic struck, there were a lot of people who laid off their staff, but who paid lakhs in donation. I would say don't donate, just pay your people fairly.
Is there? I'm not sure.
No, there was a lot of there was a lot of, where did all the migrants go? Where did all the migrants come from? They were people who were laid off from work, right? A lot of drivers, a lot of large societies had laid off their people. I think even in regular business, forget of stressful situations like a pandemic, paying fairly, being empathetic, ensuring that we guide from our council. If I have put my son through a certain schooling, am I enabling like 5 other people who have less information to say, all right, these are the opportunities that open up your minds, your purses to people who depend on you first. And then that itself informs us a lot. Because right now where we are, we the way media, the way our choices on social media also are, we get a certain kind of information. Our information is flooded by our kind. When we extend ourselves to those who are not from the same social strata or who are dependent on us, we are actually opening a window into seeing what trauma lies beyond our fences. I think starting from there becomes very, very important. And then the second thing is to be curious about the world. What are the problems that we are seeing around? And once we find out about it, I see a lot of people getting so aggrieved and they want to solve a big problem. I'd say solve the problem that you see where you are to the extent you can.
Right.
Do a good job of that. Because the world's problems are not being caused by you. They will not end with you. But you can end the problem for one person.
But don't you think, Naghma, that most of the times you realized it very early in life that, those questions, what am I doing? What's my give back? What's my second act? I realize it literally when I'm touching 50, to be honest. I don't know if people do realize it. We like you also said, that we are still privileged. We didn't have to think of who's running a house. And we could take this step forward and said, okay, let me do something more meaningful. Let me see what comes out of it. But most people are not able to make that choice, or not even shown that choice, or we just go through the pattern of life. What is your recommendation to the boys now, the generation who's growing up, to be a little more mindful of it? What do you have to say on that?
See, when I said start from home or start from where you are, it also becomes home. And I'll give you that example through my boys. Whatever happens in my work, I do bring it to the table so that they know what is going on outside in the world. I think being aware and bringing that awareness in your homes. If you have boys, holding them accountable for something that they could have done better. If you have girls, then giving them the power. Like we're constantly told how we need to protect ourselves. Talk to them about the power they hold within themselves also. So it starts from the point of where we are. And yes, you're completely right. It's also a massive privilege to be in a position to say that I have my second act. A lot of people don't have time to breathe through their first act itself.
Absolutely.
But that's why I say that, a higher purpose comes when you're honoring the purpose you're living right there. So as the person I am, when I'm playing the role of a mother, of a person in office, or of a friend, just honor that well, and be curious about those who depend on you. That's a very good start. When I'm giving a when the help comes in late, we don't even check why. Is there a curious question? Is there an intention to understand that there must be trauma on the other side? We don't ask because it doesn't really matter, because we are getting late and we are moving on in our lives.
Right.
If we just got curious about each other, there'll be a lot more empathy, and if there's a lot more empathy, I think we'd begin on our journeys. That door has been shut because we're just busy living our lives.
Which is true. Yeah. And I think this generation is also far more conscious. Also,
Very.
they're a very conscious generation. They are very up to, like how do they protect themselves? Well-being is such a big part of, their whole circle. Even to care about environment, things around them, sustainability. These are topics which, we are getting used to right now. I mean, this generation is growing up with that. They teach us. I mean, we learn
Yeah.
so much from them, right? I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
so. Coming to, of course, we touched upon second act. So what is your second act, Nagma? How do you
My
describe your
second
second
act.
act? And it's your meaning. It's nothing to do with like maybe whatever you make out of the sound and the word that connotes with you. It's a metaphor. So you decide what is second act for you.
No, my second act, and I found my purpose very recently. I've been in the sector. I've seen a lot of issues play out, and I've had the benefit of being a little at a distance and watching it play out. My second act is really to bridge the gap of awareness and resource between those who have and those who need. That's it. And I have no higher imagery of what this looks like. This is not to position it in any other way, but I think there have to be some of us sitting in the middle, just making sure people know. Information and knowledge is key to how things play out. And in my role, I get that privilege. I get to expose
Right.
those who are curious to what is really happening in the field. Edelgive is operating pan-India. We are funding more than 150 organizations. Our latest projects have gone, as far as Assam and Sikkim and all of that. You listen to those stories, you interact with those NGOs, and you realize, oh my God, this country, and it's just amazing diversity and its beauty, and what people go through on a daily basis needs to be understood better, and to be able to play any kind of part in making that understanding happening, I think is the most amazing space to be. So my second act is really there, that I want to be there. I want to just inform and in any which ways aid to bridge this gap.
Very nicely put, and I'm very proud of it that this is something that you've discovered already, and you've put very, very nicely saying that you want to bridge this gap, because I know that there is a pool of resources and a pool of even awareness and understanding, but at the same time, how do we bring that together and to be sensitive, more mindful, and to create a better space for each other? So thank you for sharing, and I love your second act. So Nagma, coming back to the work that Edelgive works on, do you want to just take us through all the kind of verticals? What exactly is the intention? What can, if somebody like me who's already on this space also wants to work with you, how do we collaborate, etc.?
Great. Yes, Edelgive is a 13-year-old foundation. Started off as a small giving foundation. We give grants to smaller NGOs in the country, working in livelihoods, rural livelihoods, with where we're talking about resilience of communities, education, and women empowerment. That's our three verticals. But specifically over the last 6-7 years, what we've become really, really good at is creating structures where multiple people can come in and collaborate on bigger projects.
Okay.
So, we have a collaboration for education, we have a collaboration for women empowerment, for migration, for climate change, for capacity building of NGOs. And our latest collaboration is actually imitating the fund structure in the corporate world, where we have a portfolio of 100 NGOs. And multiple funders are coming together, almost becoming shareholders and funding it over two years. Entire process is built to replicate. So like I said earlier, the whole thing is, how do we make giving easier and receiving even is easier? How do we make it, if somebody really wants to give, how do we clue him or her into the mission and enable trust on the process and say, well, I just give and watch the results here. So how do we make that easy? Because yes, we must give out of gratitude. We must give, there's a lot of people who want to give independently, directly. That's fine. But the problems of this country are so big. We have no structure where we can reach out to these hundreds of NGOs together. Yeah. That's really our latest mission. And we want to make, India has 100,000 NGOs. How many do you know?
Very few.
Very few. I mean, even the ones who are clued on will be able to rattle off, maybe a 30, 40 names, but there are 100,000 active NGOs. A lot of them are unknown, sitting in areas where issues are beyond our comprehension. So it'll find itself in a place where, we have people who trust us with their resources, Indian and international. And our job is to do a really make a really good effort to touching base with these small and mid-sized NGOs all across the country. We are present in more than 20 states in this country, and all in areas where, like we are in Ladakh, we are in Sikkim, we are in Assam, we are in Bombay, we are in Delhi, we have that related. We are funding more than 155, and the second piece of this is giving with dignity and listening to what is happening in the grassroots. People who are like us, if we don't listen to what's really happening, we'll miss the plot completely. So I feel the worst thing than not giving is to give it where it shouldn't be given. But how does a person who has good intention really make those decisions? We help make those decisions, and we help that connect to happen, and we make those bridges happen. So we're hoping to build structures that can define how philanthropy works out in the coming few years.
So beautiful. One thing I want to ask you is that, pandemic also showed that, when it came to education, especially like you mentioned, education, that when people had to stop kids from going to school because of lack of funds, it was more girls taken out of school than boys, and the equality starts from there. So how is an organization like yours working on creating equality right from childhood?
Yeah, we have some organizations that are working entirely on this mission. The 3 years of the pandemic has reversed nearly 2 decades of phenomenal strides we've taken, with young girls and young adult women who had better opportunities, who started working, who had jobs. And when the layoffs happened in the pandemic, they were out first. And when rehiring is happening, they will not be given the opportunity to go back. So many girls were rushed into marriages. So many girls were told that they will never go back to school again. And there have been multiple researches on that. So inequality has widened in terms of wealth, definitely. But even amongst the marginalized, the inequality has widened between men and women. Yeah. So our entire effort with our organizations is how do we ensure those women, those young girls are brought back. Also, when we work on the issues of gender, we want participation of the men and boys, because this cannot happen without participation of both genders. The beauty of having 2 genders, at least 2, there are many more, but the beauty of having this multiplicity is that we need to coexist. We all have different strengths. So instead of making it a competition, how do we look at it as a collaboration of he, she, they, and make sure that this is a better life for everyone.
Absolutely. So when did your education on other genders start? Because I've started to learn about them very recently, to be honest.
No, during this work itself, and it's sad we don't get to talk much about it because we've not even addressed the issues of women first. But there are some outstanding people who are working on these issues. They don't have enough money, they don't have enough resources, and they don't have enough platforms to voice what they're really working on. Our general awareness of who they are, what they're doing, and how we need to understand them better is very abysmal. Again, for me, it's like we've not even understood women as a species, and so every and we make it out, either we hide behind humor or we hide behind assumptions, but it is going to need to break down our mental barriers. There's a lot of mental barriers around what it means to be a non-man, non-woman, what it means to be a third gender, what does it even look like. What I feel very excited about is the younger generation is more clued in than we ever were. And again, there's some very good outreach that happened on social media, where at least if you go, you find more information. It all starts from wanting to be curious, really. Are we even curious, or are we very, very busy with ourselves?
Yeah, that's true. That's valid. Okay, so I have a beautiful rapid fire in which we get to know you a little bit more. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
So how would Nagma describe herself to others?
Oh, I am the most silent rebel in the room.
Okay. All right.
My whole life is a rebellion, but you wouldn't know.
Oh, okay. So if I rewind your life to 20 years back, what would Nagma be like?
Nagma would be a lot more outspoken, a lot more talkative, laughing all the time, like a very happy, happy child. Yes.
Okay, so what is one message you want to give to the rural women today?
Oh, the rural women can actually give us a lot more messages. The strength, the hard work, the sheer grit that exists there is out of the park. We work with a lot of them, so we know. The message would be to just keep going, and the message to my community is keep listening there. There are, there's enough that is being put out now. We need to know that an entrepreneur is not someone sitting in office like this. There is an entrepreneur in the villages who's doing a remarkable job making profit. So I think there's more lessons to take from them than to ever try to give.
Actually, I was going to ask you the next question. What is the message for your peer today that you want to give, but you already said you would like them to listen more. So that's great as well. Okay, so entrepreneurship to you is?
Entrepreneurship to me is risk-taking and risk-taking. To be an entrepreneur, the first risk is you say the stability later. First, I need to follow my mission. It's all about risk appetite. And the ones who stick around are the ones who have to be saluted for it.
Absolutely. So one desire that you have is still to be fulfilled.
One desire that is still to be fulfilled, that people start giving with the same smarts that they buy mutual funds.
Nice.
And for that to happen, that our work in the sector becomes that sharp, that we can operate fluidly, like processes are understood and the mission has to be pursued. That would be my wish, and I hope in the next 10 years that happens.
So movie or a book?
Book.
Walk or a run?
Walk.
Beach or a mountain?
Huh?
Beach or a mountain?
I didn't get it.
Beach?
Oh, mountain. Mountain.
Sleep or yoga?
Sleep. Sleep.
Why did I even ask that question? I don't know. That's good. So thank you, Nagma. It was so exciting to have you. Lots came out because I think the kind of work that you're doing, and you started, with a lot of purpose behind it. and impacting so many lives there. Good luck. And I'm with you in this mission. Let's just do it, I say.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a wonderful conversation. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. I will be in touch
And I'm
with
looking
you.
forward to your 100th episode.
Yeah, of course. You are the 70th guest. We will get there. And then we have a lot to discover more. So thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you.